Hello and welcome to another AfterMaths episode of the Primary Maths Podcast, the show where we talk all things primary maths. With me, John Cripwell.
And with me, Becky Brown.
Hello again, Becky.
Hello, I'm back.
You are back. Did you bring me anything nice back from America? That's the important question I have to ask now.
I didn't, sadly. I'd love to say I brought back the gorgeous weather I appreciated while I was out there, but I didn't.
To be fair, while you were gone, we had some gorgeous weather ourselves, and now you seem to have just brought back a bit of grey skies and drizzle, which is unfortunate. But did you not even bring me back any maths, Becky?
Well, yes, I did bring... Well, I wouldn't say I brought it back, but I experienced a nice bit of maths of life during my many legs of travel while I was between here and there.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we will look forward to hearing that a little bit later in the episode. But just for anybody who is unaware of what we're talking about, Becky wasn't here with us last week. I was joined by Ash, who has been on the podcast before. She came to talk to me about National Science Day, which was last Friday. So if you missed that episode, go back and have a listen to that. That was last week's AfterMaths episode. Because, Becky, you were travelling across the Atlantic, weren't you, to visit your sister, I think?
I was, yes. My sister lives in Washington State, so right over the other side of America. So a lot of traveling. I went to celebrate a big birthday with her. Her big birthday, not mine. But yeah.
21. Congratulations. Congratulations to your sister. And by all accounts, you had a lovely time. And you're also delighted to be back and straight back into podcasting.
Yeah, well, it's always refreshing, isn't it? I wouldn't say I'm well rested, and I'll share a bit more about that when we talk later, but definitely refreshed. It's nice to have a change of scenery for a week.
They say a change is as good as a rest, don't they? I don't know who they are. I'm not sure if they've got any qualifications to actually state that, but that's the saying. So, yeah, we'll go with that. But I'm very glad to have you back. So, one thing that people might not be glad to see coming back. You see what I've done there, Becky? This is linking items together in the most professional way. How Radio 5 have not come calling for us yet, I have no idea. But one thing that people might not be pleased to see coming back next week, you might be listening to this, and it's this week, it is, of course, the Key Stage 2 tests. Next week. So for all of our colleagues who teach Year 6 pupils, we wish you the very best of luck for a smooth and problem-free SATs week.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Having experienced it a fair few times, I quite enjoyed it when the actual week finally arrived. I think it depends.
You're a masochist, Becky. I didn't know that about you. These poor kids.
I feel like it depends, doesn't it? I always try to be as positive as I possibly can. I think most Year 6 teachers do with their classes. I think often sometimes parents can be the most stressed about SATs week, but it's an opportunity, isn't it? I think you have to try to look at it as an opportunity.
Yes. And I think you're right. For some children, it will be very, very stressful and unnerving because it's different. And in some schools, it's built up to be a very important thing because, unfortunately, under our accountability system, for some schools, it really is a very big thing, which seems crazy on the one hand when you look at these 10 and 11-year-old children who are having to sit these tests that for them are not high stakes at all, are they? I used to say to the parents of the children that I taught and the children themselves, nobody in all my years and the many, many job interviews, mostly successful, that I've been to, nobody has ever asked me for my Key Stage 2 SATs results. It's probably a good job because they didn't exist when I was in Year 6.
No.
But I think they came in the year after, actually. But, nobody's asked me for that. In fact, nobody's even asked me for my GCSEs, for most of my professional career or my A-levels. Once you've got a degree, that kind of
stage,
the
last stage is a stepping stone, isn't it? Rather than something that truly still matters.
So these tests, Yeah, these tests are not high stakes. And of course, secondary schools use the data, don't they? And they need to measure progress against that data. But again, that's about the school, really, not the child. So, um, yeah, it does seem crazy that some children might be made to feel that these are more important than they really are for the child. We know for the school and for some teachers and for some head teachers, they really are important and they have to be taken seriously. But I suppose a little bit like you, Becky, I actually used to quite like SATS week. I didn't like um, results day, I have to say.
No.
I made it a bit of a kind of a habit over the last few years. I would go to McDonald's on the way into school and buy everybody, that was in the year six team and the head teacher and things breakfast, and then we'd come together and have a look at the results together and things. And at least you could console yourself or celebrate with a
Yeah.
McMuffin. Other breakfasts are available.
Perfect celebration food.
But yes, food makes everything a little better, whether you're
Yeah.
celebrating or commiserating, doesn't it? But actually, SATS week, I didn't have to plan as much. We gave the kids extended break times and things. It was just kind of the stress of making sure that everything went right during the test
Yeah.
itself. Did you ever have any children try and cheat or anything like that, Becky?
No. But when I don't know. Schools might still do this back because it was quite a long time ago when I was in year six, and we did it in a very formal. I mean, considering I've just said, we tried to keep it as normal as possible in the hall on separate. It was very formally done. I think now it's tended to be done in the classroom in a normal environment. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, we still did it in the hall because we had 60 children and not enough staff to
Yeah.
try and do that. So we would have some staff with individual children or small groups of children who needed a more comfortable setting, shall we say. But actually,
Yeah.
I think some of the children actually quite liked doing it in the hall because it made them feel important and a little bit grown
Yeah.
up. And, this is different from what everybody else is doing. So some of them
I
quite
think,
liked being in the hall. They told me they were looking
yeah.
forward to doing that.
I think as long as you've practiced it, as long as it's not the first time they've ever done it, I think it's okay, isn't it? I do remember once, and this is now showing how long ago it was, but when you used to have the recordings for the mental maths,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
sometimes didn't go as smoothly
On the
as
tapes. Yeah.
yes. And I do remember one year because they give you the transcript, don't they, in case something goes
Yes.
wrong. And there was a case of having to read it and, have a time how long you'd kept between each one. And yeah, that was quite interesting. But
Well, for us, it was quite funny because so at my last school, I was assistant head teacher and year six, upper key stage two lead. And we had a deputy head who was from Sunderland and he was in charge of English. And our head teacher was from Birmingham, just outside Birmingham. You wouldn't like me saying that it was from Birmingham, but just outside Birmingham. So both of them had quite strong non-Derby accents. And so we realised on, I can't remember which morning, it's the Tuesday morning or the Monday morning that they do the spelling test.
spelling.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be best for either of them to read out the spellings because, yeah, book instead of book. It's a totally different phoneme and way of approaching the spelling, isn't it? So it's little bits of admin almost and organisation that you have to think about ahead of time. But if you are involved in SATs this year, we hope that they go particularly well. I have to say, my last thing on this, Becky, I don't know whether you would have taught in year six. As you say, it was probably a few years ago. There was a reading paper a few years ago. I think it was, I mean, it must have been a few years ago now, but the title of the extract I'm thinking about was called The Wild Ride or Wild Ride or something about that. And it was about a girl who was living in Africa and about her going on there'll be lots of year six teachers here nodding sagely, going on an adventure where she rides a giraffe. She's been told not to ride the giraffe, but she rides the giraffe and she runs into some warthogs who, as I remember, were running around in bewilderment. That was the word that tripped everybody up. They had to explain what the word bewilderment meant. Anyway, last weekend, I took my two girls to Twycross Zoo, and we saw a pair of giraffes at the zoo. And my eldest, clearly, she still remembers that paper because she went, there is no way anybody would ride one of those giraffes. They're massive. To get on the back of one of them, it's huge. And a warthog wouldn't get anywhere near you if you were on the back of a giraffe like that. So,
Oh,
yeah, it's funny how, we know that
remember.
Chen makes his way into, wider life, doesn't he, out
Yeah,
from the
it
maths
does.
papers.
Yeah.
But it's funny the unintended impact that SATs papers can have.
Yeah, 2016. I've just checked, John. That was
There you go.
2016, so 10 years ago. Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, she would have seen that as one of the practice papers because
Yeah,
she only did a SATs a couple of years ago.
yeah,
But yeah, no
brilliant.
way you ride a giraffe. If anybody out there has ridden a giraffe and would like to send us photographic evidence of that is not generated by AI, I would love to see it, please, because there's
Surely
no
not.
way you're
That's
going to ride one of those. They're
right.
enormous.
Yeah, that would be tricky.
It would be tricky. Yeah, it would absolutely be tricky. Right. The next thing that I just wanted to talk about just briefly was something about representation, actually, because I'm going to lead a staff meeting at a school I've been working with around representation next week. And I was thinking, how can I? So, Becky, that we've banged on about this idea that representation, whether it be concrete or pictorial, is a way into understanding the problem, but not really a way of necessarily solving the problem. It might be how you solve it initially, but you need to move fairly quickly away from that, really, and find a more efficient way of doing it. So I was thinking, how can I convey that? Because when I've been working with the maths lead there, they said, it's great teachers are using manipulatives, but it seems like they're becoming a little bit of a crutch for the maths rather than for just revealing the structure. So I was thinking about this, and I thought you'd like this, Becky, so I thought I'd share it with you. Maybe any listeners out there that wanted to do something on this in their school, they could take this. So my idea was around, I thought I would do a little bit on one of my favourite subjects, which is fractions, on exchanging or finding equivalent mixed numbers from improper fractions. So if you're not familiar with what an improper fraction is where the numerator, which is the top number in a fraction, is greater than the denominator, the bottom number in a fraction. So, for example, a proper fraction might be 3/4, so that's less than a whole. But an improper fraction might be 5/4. So you've obviously got 4/4 make your whole and then one more quarter. And I know you like fractions as well, don't you, Becky? Yeah. So I thought you'd like this one. So my idea was one way that you might represent this is using bars. So you could draw your quarters out in groups of 4 and see how many quarters you've got, how many wholes you've got, how many groups of 4. Another way that you might do it is using counters. So I thought I would get the staff, first of all, to make 5/4. Count out 5 counters. They're your 5/4. Can you make a group of 4? How many have you got left over? So we can see we've got 1 whole and 1 counter. Might do that then with 9/4 maybe, so that we can see that we've got 2 wholes. Yep.
Yeah.
Then we might change it so that we do it with, I don't know, each one represents a sixth now instead, and we could have 7/6. Might do one that's not an improper fraction actually and just have 5/6 and see, can we see that there's only 5/6 here, we can't make a whole, it's less than a whole, it's a proper fraction.
Yeah.
And actually use the counters to do that because I have seen this before in a lesson where the children are using the counters to make the groups, to make the wholes, and then drawing bars from them as well, which is great. And then I thought my next question might be something like 85/5.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then see how efficient it is to use the counters to represent that problem.
Yeah. Or whether you have enough counters.
Oh, well, you definitely won't have enough counters, will you? Not for a whole class to do 85/5. But, I just thought that was quite a nice way of showing what the counters are useful for, but also the limitations of them.
Yeah.
Because
Great.
because I did see that in a lesson I won't say when or where, but I did see that happen in a lesson, and the teacher was great. The teacher recognised that that was going to happen and had clearly made the link to multiples and times tables and things, and that was great. The children were able to access it that way. But if they hadn't done that, they wouldn't have had a way really of doing that. So, well, some children would, and that's the thing, isn't it? Some children would go, I
Yeah,
see
they would
this.
spot it.
Yeah. But other children, who were probably me at school, would go, well, I don't know how to do this now because, I can't do it with counters. And even drawing out bars is going to take me a long time, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just thought that was a nice example,
That's
Becky.
Yeah, that is good. That is great because there are limitations, aren't there? I mean, the whole point of algorithms is efficiency, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you need to make that leap at some point. You can't just rely on, and yeah, it's great for revealing structure and supporting understanding, but there has to be that leap and there has to be an understanding of why you've done it, why
At
you've made
what
that leap.
point? Yeah, at what point in that process do you think you would you introduce the idea of, oh, can you see that we're making groups of 4 here? Is that similar to anything else that you know?
I think I'd probably do it from the start, just trying to make those links from the start, whether I'd make it a formal formal algorithm at the beginning or not. And of course, then you'd do it alongside, wouldn't you? Do the two together in some way. I mean, if you had the counters, like you said, somebody had used counters and then transferred it into a bar and then transfer. I think it's important to see the links between those different
Yeah,
options
totally agree. Yeah.
as early as possible to see the link or at least be talking about that link.
I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with saying, oh, look, we've made a group. I think maybe where you're doing 5 quarters, for example, we've made a group of 4. It's difficult to see that link to the times table, isn't it? You need to sort of make maybe a mixed number that's got more than 1 in it to really
Yeah,
see that. And maybe that's the point that would make sense. But I totally agree with you. We're not trying to hide anything here, are we? The idea is to try and make those links and make the
yeah.
connections. So don't leave children guessing.
No,
Equally, we don't have to tell them all the time either. So, you're questioning, I suppose, oh, we've made 2 groups of 5 here. Can anybody see a different way of doing that? Or can anybody see a link to something else that we already know? Or the way that you might question that and draw that out, I think is probably key. But some
yeah,
children may well need to be told so that they can see it. And then they can practice, as you say, Becky, totally agree, practice doing it side by side with the algorithm, with the pictorial representation, with the counters, so they've got those there. But what you
yeah.
definitely don't want them to be doing is counting out 85 counters and then making groups of 5 out of them, because
No,
that's not an efficient method, is it?
no. And I think that sometimes we forget that the importance of efficiency in maths. I think sometimes we can get a bit hung up on getting the calculations done or, working through a sheet of problems
It's
or
definitely a
calculations.
balance, isn't it, between that conceptual understanding. I think efficiency's got to be the end. When we think about the term fluency, we think about efficiency and accuracy as well as flexibility.
Yeah.
So to be truly fluent in something, you need to be efficient at doing it. And, I would argue that if you are having to use counters to find equivalents, improper and mixed numbers, improper fractions and mixed numbers, that's not you're not fluent at doing that yet, which is fine. It's a step along the process, isn't it? But we do definitely need to make that process clear and explicit and move them along intentionally and not leave it to chance that somebody might notice that, we're dividing by 5 or we're finding multiples of 5. Yeah. So that's my plan. I will let you know how it goes.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, whether it works or not. But that's what I'm planning to do. I'm hoping none of them are listening, because otherwise it's just spoiled my staff
Yeah.
input next week. But there you go.
I hope they are listening.
Well, I hope they are listening. Yeah. If you're not listening, why are you not listening? That's what I want to know. I'll tell them on Wednesday when I do this. I've already explained all this on the podcast. You crack on. You know what you're doing.
Yes.
And just assume that they've all listened. Yeah, we'll see how we go with that. I'll let you know.
Good luck.
So I understand, Becky, that you have a maths of life for us from your travels.
I do, and it seems like, well, I mean, I could have done lots of things. I think back at the very first, I think it might have been the very first podcast we did, we talked about exchange rates and having to do a bit of quick math. So I did a little bit of that while I was away. But the thing which, and we're going from one of your actual favorite topic of fractions to your not so favorite topic of time here, I'm afraid,
Mm.
Jon.
Although I'm loving the way that we are teaching time currently.
Yes.
If you haven't seen, where have you been? But if you haven't seen that Twinkle have released updated Planet Maths first units that I have been involved in, Becky's been involved in, led by the brilliant Lisa Tunnicliffe, who's been on the podcast before, and a fantastic maths team here at Twinkle. We have been working on how to teach time in a way that makes sense. And you can find those units now. I'll put the link to them in the show notes. But yeah, so yes, I do have some traumatic history of trying to teach time, Becky. That's fair. But
Yeah,
I'm liking what we're doing with it now.
definitely. And it was a perfect time to have a time related maths of life.
Absolutely.
So I was traveling from London to Seattle, which is the nearest airport to where I was going. And that takes about 9 hours and 45 minutes. And there is an 8-hour time difference. So I took off at
Which
nine.
way, Becky? Time,
So they're 8 hours behind us.
they're 8 hours behind. So
Yes.
you
So I
arrived
was
an
traveling
hour and
west.
45 minutes after you left. Is that right?
Yes. I
Okay.
arrived at 9. I took off at 9:50 a.m., landed at 11. It was about 11:30 a.m.
But for you, 9 hours and 45 minutes had passed.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, I mean, it just that sort of jet lag, it sort of makes sense, doesn't it? You sort of think, actually, yes, I've been awake for all these extra hours, but haven't actually experienced them yet. And
So
I
you
was
were
starting.
flying nearly as fast as the sun, but not as the sun was traveling, or I suppose as the Earth was turning, we should say, sun not traveling.
Yes.
You were traveling nearly as fast as the Earth was turning then, but not quite.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what made me start thinking about all the maths involved. So I was thinking about time zones and the Earth. If you imagine the equator, I guess, or a circle. I know it's not quite a circle, but let's imagine it is, of a circle of 360 degrees around the edge of the Earth. It takes obviously 24 hours for the Earth to make a full spin, because we know, base 60, base 24, nothing nice and easy with time, but it takes 24 hours. If you divide those 360 degrees by 24 hours, you'll get 15 degrees. So 15 degrees, for every 15 degrees of longitude you travel, east or west, the sun's position changes by 1 hour. So that's how it all sort of works.
Oh, that's quite neat, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And I suppose it does make sense. 24 hours, you've divided it by 24, so therefore each segment will be 1 hour. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So that's how time zones are calculated. And as I said, Seattle is 8 hours behind us. So if you're looking at Greenwich Mean Time as being 0, that will be a -8. I also have a sister-in-law who currently lives in Papua New Guinea, which is 8 hours ahead of us. So we are calculating time differences quite often to talk to our family members.
Yeah.
It's a really good opportunity to use some negative numbers, isn't it? If you were talking about it in class, and I think sometimes that did used to come up. But I started to think about time zones a bit more, and as always, did a little bit of internet-based research into and found some interesting things. So that 1 hour jump is great for those 15 degrees, but in some countries they split the difference and do a half-hour jump. So India,
Yes, I've heard this. Yeah.
plus 5.5 hours,
Yeah.
and Nepal go even further. They are plus 5.75 hours.
Oh,
So, well, most countries would do those hour leaps. Sometimes some countries have split it. And there is one country which surprisingly is only in one time zone. Jon, do you know what country?
I know this, Becky. I know this. I don't know how I know it, but as you were talking to me earlier about time, I was thinking, yeah, I know that in China they only have one time zone for the entire country. Now, given that country, I don't know how many time zones they should have if you were to follow
Oh,
the. Do you know?
It's 5 altogether. They should have
5, so a 5-hour difference from west to east in China. That's impressive, isn't it? But yes, yeah, I know China has one time zone for its whole country. But yeah, it's surprising, isn't it? Because 5 hours makes a big difference, doesn't it? You
Yeah.
could be talking about it being light at 1 in the morning.
Well, yeah, in Western China, sometimes it's still light at midnight because it's in a totally different time zone to how it should be.
Yeah,
Do you which country has the most different time zones?
Russia.
If this was QI, I'd be setting off an alarm for you now.
Oh, well, yeah. We should do that. We should do
I wish
that.
I had one.
We need to invest in that technology for future episodes.
Russia does have 11 time zones,
Okay.
but a country that has more time zones than that
Oh,
is
hang on. No. Russia seems quite a big place. I can't imagine it's not going to be somewhere big, is it? It's going to be somewhere smaller that have just split it up into lots of smaller time zones. So somewhere like India or somewhere like that. No,
it is France.
is it?
Yes. France spans territories in the Pacific, Indian, Atlantic, and has a claim in the Antarctic as well.
Oh,
So
now, come on. We're not talking about the country of France then? No?
no, we're talking about France. That's that counts in its time zones.
This feels like a little bit of a pedant's answer here, but I'm all for it. I love that.
Yeah. So 12 time zones, 13 if you count their Antarctic claim as well. So yeah,
Which we don't. We don't on this podcast, Becky. We don't recognise that claim on the podcast.
But yes, surprising. It's another
taking
surprising
a firm political position on that. Some things I'm unsure about, like how many sides a circle has. But in terms of France's claim to the Antarctic, I'm very firm. Yeah. We don't recognise it.
No, okay, fair enough. So 12, but still 12, which is one more than
that. That's impressive. But if we weren't counting all of France's different territories, and of course we should, but apart from the Antarctic, but it would be Russia then, would it?
It would be, yes, with 11.
Okay. I'm going to take a moral point for that, Becky, even if it's not strictly true.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And then, of course, when I started thinking about the difference in time between Seattle, which is 8 hours behind us, and Papua New Guinea, which is 8 hours ahead, and I thought if they were talking about the time difference between those two different places, they probably wouldn't say, well, it is 16 hours ahead. Mm-hmm. But if you were calculating, you'd probably go back 8 hours instead. Because, of course, there's an international date line sitting in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And if you cross it, you've jumped forward a whole day. And if you go back across it, you could just relive the whole day again. It's like Groundhog Day.
I often think about this at New Year's when you see the fireworks starting in Sydney Harbour and things and making their way across. Of course, Sydney is not the first place that gets New Year, is it? It's some small islands in the Pacific, but it seems to be the place where you sort of think about it kicking off, I suppose. There's a fascinating, I use that term loosely, but there is a fascinating history to time zones, actually, which I think we should do a deep dive on at some point. But the whole thing about why Greenwich Mean Time is used internationally and how that came to be, it's all to do with shipping and nautical adventures back in the day, but surprisingly late on in all that, all those naval shenanigans. It was surprisingly late on that all of this was worked out and agreed on internationally, actually. So, yeah, if there's an appetite for that, I know we're going to get thousands of emails.
Please tell us more.
Please, we want to know. Tell us about Greenwich Mean Time. But we will, Becky, we will. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do it as a summer special in the summer. So if you're on holiday, you can listen to it then. And if otherwise,
It's a great idea. And we should also talk about British summertime in that session. I was going to talk about it, but actually let's save it because that's another fascination about who follows it and who doesn't. And
okay, I'm thinking on the fly here, Becky, but I think that we should get together and have a barbecue, probably in the rain, and do a British summertime special around time and how long it takes to light a barbecue and those sorts of things, and the international
Okay.
date line and things. We'll do that for a summer special. So make sure, if you're listening now, make sure you are subscribed so that you never miss an episode, because I know you would hate to miss out on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do give us a like or subscribe. And if you've got anything else you might like us to talk about on the summer specials, let us know.
Anything else, yeah, or anything other. If there's something else that you would rather us talk about rather than
Yes.
international dates and times, then do
Yeah.
let us know. If you don't, it's your own fault. That's all I can say. You know, you've got nobody else to blame but yourself. I think that's fair.
Absolutely.
Right, final thing for this week, Becky. While you were away last week, some research landed that I did sort of address in last week's AfterMaths episode, but the conversation has continued. And I'm interested on your thoughts on it. Now, I've given you no time to prepare for this and no heads up about what it is. So, but I don't know whether it has permeated your American voyage zeitgeist. There was some research that landed last week in conjunction with the EEF and the University College London around mixed attainment and setting. Did you see this land at all, Becky?
I did. I didn't see it when I was away. I tried to be off grid as much as I possibly could, but I have caught up with it since I got back. Yeah. It's an ongoing discussion, isn't it? But interested to see it in the form of research.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. And I'm not sure that it has done much to sway people from whatever their preconceived ideas are around setting or mixed attainment grouping, because I think there were things in there that you could argue either way, frankly.
Yeah.
For me, the interesting thing really, and again, I did talk about this last week, so I'm not going to go into depth on it now, but there was a couple of interesting things that really stood out for me, which I think, whether you agree with setting or not, are important things to take away and think about. And one of them was that so they looked at 97 schools, I think it was, 96, 97 schools. And in the schools that set their pupils in years 7 and 8, so this was Key Stage 3, the vast majority where they had a top set, that top set was taught by a specialist maths teacher, and the bottom set often was not, which to me just flies counterintuitively to everything that you would want to do, surely, does it not? I know that schools need to focus on, getting those high grades, and my daughter is in a top set in her school, and I wanted to have a good maths teacher. Obviously I do. But if you've got children that have got gaps to make up, surely it makes sense for the most qualified teacher to teach those groups, no?
Absolutely does. I think it comes back to also when you're taking children out of a even at a primary level, taking children out of a lesson and not being taught by a teacher. And that's not to say that support staff don't do a fantastic job,
No.
because they do, but confidence and experience in teaching surely is going to be supportive of children that need it most. I totally agree.
Yeah, there's a reason that teachers are teachers, aren't there? And if I was a parent of a child who needed extra support and there was an opportunity for them to have that from a teacher who, has studied how to offer that extra support. And again, we're not diminishing the vital role that teaching assistants play. But if you are lucky enough to have a teaching assistant who is comfortable taking the class for a particular, an afternoon subject, maybe whilst you can do a little bit of input or something, or a sports coach who comes in who is happy teaching PE, then it makes sense, surely, for those children to get the best quality teaching that they can have, because they've got the most progress to make and the biggest gaps to fill. So I thought that was interesting, Becky, because one of the kind of the highlights, the headlines, that's what I was looking for. One of the headlines was that pupils, there was no difference in progress for lower prior retaining pupils in mixed ability or in streamed. And I thought, well, yeah, that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Because you're not, they're not seeing any benefit of being in a stream or a set, because they're not getting the quality first teaching necessarily, I suppose. that they might be. And also the other thing that came out of it was the things that we talk about all the time in primary was that the children in the mixed attainment classes were receiving a diet of very procedural, very sort of non-conceptual maths lessons. There was not much evidence of using manipulatives or pictorial representations or all of the stuff that we talk about, on the podcast and in primary teaching generally. That really wasn't evident, and apparently those lessons tended to be pitched more towards the lower prior retaining pupils, which again, you are giving them an artificial ceiling, aren't you? And the pupils who are higher prior retainers are not having the opportunity to engage with meaningful challenges. And where those meaningful challenges were evident, they weren't linked to the learning in the lesson, which just seems bizarre, doesn't it? But it seems as though perhaps there was a bank of, if you finish your work, go and get a challenge from over there. And that's what the prior higher retainers were doing, getting a challenge, but not linked to the maths that they were doing in that lesson. So there's lots to take from it, I think. And I don't think we can just, those of us who are perhaps of the ilk that, particularly at primary, we think mixed attainment teaching works. I think there are cases where setting has its benefits. And we can't disregard this research, but I think maybe the headlines that we're taking from it are maybe not the headlines that we should be focusing on, and rather it's how those classes are being taught.
That's what I was going to say. It's what is happening, isn't it? I think it's that knowing how to challenge and what challenge looks like. I think when you first, I went from setting 5 ways to doing 5 mixed attainment classes. And the biggest worry from everybody was around about children who were lower prior retainers. It was all about, they'll struggle and they'll fall behind. But I felt like the challenge was not in thinking about those children specifically, but more making sure that the children who were higher retainers prior were getting what they needed to push their learning on. I think it sometimes can be hard to know how to do that. And I think that's where it comes. And maybe that's where it comes from putting certain teachers in certain sets when they're setted, is having the confidence and the experience to do that. It's not.
Yeah, you can see how that happens, can't you? Because it even happens in primary school. I was talking to a teacher this week who teaches in year 6, and she again said that people are reluctant to teach in year 6 because they feel like the maths is hard. So you can imagine it's the same thing at secondary. If you're a non-specialist maths teacher teaching the top set in year 8 or year 9, the maths might quickly, my daughter's in year 8 and already the maths is going beyond what I'm comfortable with from a Key Stage 2 point of view. So you can see why that might happen. But that doesn't make it right, does it? And, I think there are probably better ways of handling it, he says, as a primary school teacher who, doesn't have a dog in the fight in terms of secondary education. And it's all, we know it's very easy for people to look from the outside. But I think until you can get the teaching right, it's very hard to say that this particular approach or that particular approach is effective or isn't effective if the fundamentals aren't in place and working well.
Yeah, it's like anything, isn't it? You can have a list of how things should happen, but it's what's actually happening in the room that's the really important thing, and that can sometimes be difficult to gauge. And particularly thinking about sample sizes. I mean, 97 isn't a huge sample.
No.
Yeah.
No, it'd be interesting to know how those schools were chosen as well, wouldn't it? And what they were doing prior, and their reasons for doing what they were doing. I just think that it's really, and we do it on the podcast. I know we do. We take a little bit of research and we say, oh, look, this seems to indicate that. And that can be helpful for a conversation, I think, and to think about your own practice. But when it can have sweeping implications for thousands of pupils in one go if a school changes from one approach to another. We've got to be really careful, I think, in how we read the research and what implications it might have practically day to day.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely an interesting piece of research. But like you say, taking it alongside other things.
Yeah, I would just encourage anybody to actually read the read the actual paper behind it, which is really interesting. And as ever with academic papers, largely factual rather than opinionated. The opinions tend to come afterwards as people interpret what was in the paper. So, read that and have a look at it and see what you make of it yourself. And things are worth trying, aren't they? If things are not working as they are at the moment, it might be worth trying something. But digging underneath why it's not working currently, have you got everything else in place to make whatever you're doing successful? Because if those things aren't there, there's pointless changing anything else. It's a bit like the old midlife crisis, isn't it? Buying a sport. I'm not feeling very happy at the minute. I'll buy myself a sports car, and that will make everything better. And actually, that's not really addressing the problem underneath it all. I'm thinking of buying a sports car though, Becky.
Oh, no, I haven't. Not yet.
Just hired one in America. Yeah. Soft top highway, whatever it is, 66, Route 66, isn't it? That's it. Right. I think that will do us for this week's AfterMaths episode. It's been lovely to have you back, Becky. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be back chatting maths again, Jon. Looking forward to next week already.
Yep, we should be back on Tuesday with another interview episode. But other than that, Becky and I will see you again next Friday. Don't forget to drop us a like and subscribe. If you want to get in touch with us, it's primarymathspodcast@twinkle.co.uk. And we will see you next Friday. Have a good week.
See you next time.